My husband Oliver smiled that cold, calculated smile I'd once found charming and slid the termination letter across his mahogany desk. Congratulations, darling. You're sacked. Pack your things and get out. This £16 million company belongs to me now, and Victoria will be taking your position. The divorce papers will arrive tomorrow morning. Security stood behind me like prison guards whilst Victoria Ashworth positioned herself beside Oliver's chair, her manicured fingers resting possessively on his shoulder. The woman I'd foolishly trusted, the woman I'd mentored for 2 years, now wore a triumphant smirk that made my stomach churn. Effective immediately, Oliver continued, his wedding band catching the grey London morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Security will escort you out in precisely 10 minutes. I stared at the man I'd spent 8 years building CyberShield technologies with from nothing. The man who'd promised to love me through sickness and health, who'd sworn we were equal partners in everything. My mobile vibrated in my jacket pocket, the timer I'd set 6 months ago when I first discovered their affair. 10 minutes. They had exactly 10 minutes before their world came crashing down around them. Oliver's eyes held not a trace of the warmth that had once made me believe in forever. Victoria's presence beside him was a deliberate humiliation, a calculated move to strip away whatever dignity I had left. They'd orchestrated this moment with theatrical precision, right down to the morning timing that would ensure maximum office gossip. But they'd made one catastrophic error. They'd underestimated the woman who'd coded every single line of CyberShield's revolutionary threat detection system. Every algorithm, every security protocol, every digital heartbeat of their precious empire, all of it flowed from my mind, my fingers, my sleepless nights of brilliant creation. The company we'd built in our cramped Shoreditch flat, surviving on Tesco meal deals and dreams bigger than our overdraft, now occupied 3 floors of a gleaming Canary Wharf tower. What had started as late-night conversations about predicting cyber attacks before they happened had become Britain's most innovative cybersecurity firm. Oliver handled the charm offensive, schmoozing clients, sweet-talking investors, managing the books with his economics degree from Cambridge. I lived in the code, building our platform line by line, creating something the world had never seen before. We were meant to be the perfect balance. Our wedding happened during our first major product launch. I wore a simple cream dress from John Lewis, and we married at Hackney Town Hall on a Wednesday afternoon because we couldn't spare a weekend. Oliver held my hands and made promises that went beyond traditional vows. We're partners in everything, he'd whispered for only me to hear. 50-50 in business and in life. Your dreams are my dreams, Erin. Every single word had been a lie. The changes began so subtly I barely noticed them. During Monday morning meetings, Oliver started interrupting when I explained technical updates to our growing team. What Erin means, he'd say with patronizing patience, then proceed to mansplain my own innovations back to me in kindergarten terms. When I confronted him privately, he'd laugh it off. I'm just helping, love. You know how you get lost in technical jargon sometimes. Not everyone has your brilliant mind. Then came the client presentations. I'd spend days preparing demonstrations of our cutting-edge features, only to watch Oliver present them whilst I sat silent beside him like expensive furniture. Erin's our technical wizard, he'd tell potential clients with that devastating smile. She makes the magic happen behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, exactly where he wanted me. Victoria's arrival 18 months ago had felt like salvation. Finally, another woman in our testosterone-fueled environment of programmers and sales executives. She was polished, professional, with an MBA from Oxford and 5 years at Deloitte. Her references were impeccable, her interview flawless. She's perfect, I told Oliver afterwards. She understands operations in ways we desperately need. He hired her the next morning. Victoria integrated seamlessly into our company culture. She streamlined our chaotic client onboarding, organized our disaster of a filing system, and somehow made our supply cupboard actually functional. She brought homemade biscuits to meetings and remembered everyone's birthdays with thoughtful cards. I believed I'd found not just a colleague, but a friend. The late-night strategy sessions began 2 months after Victoria joined. Emergency client presentations, revenue projections, quarterly planning. Always something urgent that couldn't wait until morning. Head home, darling, Oliver would say around 7. Victoria and I need to finish these quarterly projections. Don't wait up. I'd drive alone through London's endless traffic to our Islington townhouse, heating up leftover Indian takeaway whilst watching mindless television. Oliver would slip into bed at 2 or 3 in the morning, reeking of Victoria's distinctive perfume, something expensive and cloying that lingered on his shirts. "You're imagining things," he said when I finally worked up courage to ask. "Victoria wears the same perfume half the women in London wear. You're being paranoid, love." Was I? I started questioning my own instincts, doubting perceptions I'd always trusted. The stress of growing our company from start-up to major player was overwhelming. Perhaps I was seeing problems where none existed. After all, Oliver loved me. We'd built this empire together. We were partners. The September board meeting should have been my moment of absolute triumph. I'd just completed a revolutionary platform upgrade that increased our processing speed by 400%. Our clients were ecstatic, singing praises that should have echoed in every industry publication. But when Oliver presented to our investors, my breakthrough became a collaborative team effort led by our exceptional technical department. "Don't you mean led by Erin?" asked Charles Morrison, our lead investor, his confusion evident. Oliver's laugh was smooth as aged whiskey. "Of course, Charles. Erin's our CTO, but she'll be the first to tell you this was a collaborative effort. We believe in team success here at CyberShield." I sat frozen, unable to contradict him in front of the board without appearing petty or unprofessional. Victoria took notes beside him, her expression neutral, helpful, just doing her job whilst my life's work was being stolen in real time. Sleep became impossible. I lay beside Oliver listening to his steady breathing, realizing something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't our company anymore. Somewhere along the way, it had become his company, and I'd been demoted to a highly paid employee who happened to share his bed. But I wasn't ready to admit that my perfect life was already over. The discovery came on an ordinary Thursday afternoon in October. I'd collected fish and chips from Oliver's favorite place near London Bridge, the one where the owner always remembered his order: cod, extra mushy peas, curry sauce on the side. I balanced the steaming packages whilst using my keycard, heading straight for Oliver's corner office. The digital clock on my phone showed 2:47 p.m., and I'd specifically checked his calendar to avoid interrupting his 3 p.m. conference call with investors in Edinburgh. His office door stood slightly ajar. I could hear voices from the boardroom down the corridor, including Oliver's distinctive laugh echoing off the polished walls. Perfect, his meeting had moved, giving me the chance to surprise him with his favorite meal. I pushed the door open with my hip, ready to leave the food on his desk as a thoughtful gesture. Victoria's silver laptop sat open on his desk, still logged in, the screen bright and demanding attention. I should have simply closed it, left the food, and walked away. But something about seeing her personal device in his private space made my chest tighten with unspoken dread. The screen displayed her Gmail account, and the preview of the top message made my world tilt sideways. "Can't wait for this weekend. The cottage in Cotswolds is perfect for what we discussed." From Oliver's email address. The fish and chips suddenly smelled nauseating. I set them down carefully, my eyes fixed on that damning screen. My finger hovered over the trackpad for just a heartbeat before I began scrolling through their correspondence. Email after email, a digital paper trail of betrayal stretching back 5 months. My husband and Victoria weren't just having an affair, they were systematically planning to destroy my career and steal everything I'd built. "The board trusts me completely," Oliver had written 3 weeks earlier. "When I tell them Erin's been unstable and her work quality is declining, they'll support the termination. Her 48% ownership means nothing if she's voted out for cause." Victoria's response was even more vicious. "The documentation I've been building will support that narrative perfectly. Every time she questions your decisions, I've noted it as insubordinate behavior. Every work-from-home day becomes absence without proper communication. We have enough evidence now." My hands remained steady as I photographed every damning exchange with my mobile. 27 photos documenting the systematic destruction of my reputation, my marriage, my life's work. The evidence was overwhelming, devastating, irrefutable. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. I closed the laptop precisely as I'd found it and was unwrapping the fish and chips when Oliver walked in with 2 other executives. "Darling." His face lit up with practiced affection that now looked like a mask. "What a lovely surprise." "Thought you might be peckish," I managed, my voice somehow normal despite the hurricane raging inside my chest. "Hello, James. Hello, David." They exchanged pleasantries whilst I played the devoted wife, mentioning I needed to return to debugging the new security protocol. Oliver kissed my cheek, a performance for his colleagues, and I left, walking steadily until I reached the car park where I was violently sick beside my Range Rover. That night, lying beside the stranger wearing my husband's face, I watched him scroll through his mobile, occasionally chuckling at messages. Was he texting her? Planning their weekend in the Cotswolds while I lay inches away, completely oblivious to his double life? Everything all right? He asked without looking at me. You were quiet during dinner. Just tired. The new protocol is complex. Perhaps you should take a proper break. You've been pushing yourself rather hard lately. There it was, the foundation being laid for my supposed instability. Every caring suggestion was actually ammunition for my professional assassination. The next morning, after Oliver left for his gym session, I opened my laptop and began the most important work of my career. Not the security protocol, but something far more crucial, documenting every single contribution I'd made to CyberShield. I created encrypted folders, backed up to 3 different cloud services under accounts Oliver knew nothing about. Patent applications I'd filed independently before the company's incorporation. Original code repositories with timestamp verification. Email chains from our early days when Oliver freely admitted he couldn't understand my technical explanations. I also bought a tiny digital recorder from a spy shop in Camden Market, paying cash whilst wearing dark glasses like some character from a thriller novel. But it worked. I recorded meetings where Oliver presented my innovations as his own strategic vision. I recorded him telling potential investors that I was merely technical support whilst he provided the business genius. The hardest part was continuing our charade. Kissing him goodbye each morning, sleeping beside him each night, pretending I didn't know he was planning to destroy everything we'd supposedly built together whilst shagging my protégé in expensive hotel rooms. Some nights I'd lie awake until dawn, writing code on my laptop whilst he snored beside me. But this wasn't just any code. This was my insurance policy, my nuclear option if they succeeded in forcing me out. I embedded invisible tracking protocols into every major system I'd built. Not malicious code, nothing that would harm normal operations, but digital signatures proving authorship. I created hidden backdoors into the platform, not to damage it, but to ensure I could prove ownership if needed. Each line was crafted to be completely undetectable during routine operations, like having spare keys to every lock in a house you'd built with your own hands. You're working too late, Oliver observed one morning, finding me asleep at the kitchen table, laptop still warm from hours of coding. Perhaps we should discuss reducing your workload. You look exhausted, love. Another brick in their wall of manufactured evidence. I started seeing Dr. Sarah Fletcher, a therapist in Richmond, far enough from the city that I wouldn't encounter anyone from our professional circle. I paid cash, used my maiden name, and poured out my story to someone who listened without judgment. Gaslighting, she said during our 4th session. What you're describing is textbook emotional manipulation designed to make you question your own reality. But what if I'm wrong? What if I am being paranoid? She looked at me with gentle certainty. Erin, you have photographic evidence of their affair and conspiracy. That's not paranoia, that's pattern recognition. November dissolved into December. The company Christmas party was exquisite torture, watching Oliver and Victoria maintain professional distance whilst their eyes found each other across the room. I wore my best emerald dress and smiled until my face ached, playing the devoted wife and dedicated CTO. Erin is absolutely the heart of our technical innovation, Oliver announced during his toast, using past tense instead of present. Not is creating or continues building, just is the heart, something that could be replaced when it stopped beating. 2 weeks before Christmas, I accidentally joined their private conversation on a conference call. I'd dialed in early for a board meeting and they were using the line, thinking they had privacy. After New Year, Oliver was saying, "We'll execute the plan. Clean slate, fresh start." The divorce papers? Victoria asked. Same day. Rip the Band-Aid off completely. By February, you'll officially be CTO and we can stop this exhausting secrecy. I muted my line and listened to them plan my professional and personal execution with a detached efficiency of military strategists. Taking notes in my encrypted journal, documenting every detail of their betrayal. January, I had less than a month to prepare. But they'd made one crucial miscalculation. They assumed I'd go quietly, defeated and broken. They had no idea what someone becomes when cornered with nothing left to lose. The code I wrote during those final weeks wasn't born from anger. It was sculpted from pure, crystalline rage transformed into digital precision. Every vulnerability I embedded was like loosening a single bolt on a suspension bridge. Individually meaningless, collectively catastrophic. I worked through the nights while Oliver slept peacefully beside me, his breathing steady and untroubled. How could he sleep so soundly while systematically destroying the woman who'd given him everything? The answer was simple: psychopaths always sleep well. My fingers flew across the keyboard, creating not destruction, but revelation. Each line of code was designed to expose the inherent weaknesses that already existed in any complex system. I wasn't planting bombs, I was removing the safety barriers that prevented natural disasters. The platform I'd built was like a magnificent cathedral, every arch and buttress perfectly balanced. But remove just the right supporting stones, and physics would do the rest. The structure wouldn't explode, it would simply stop being able to hold its own weight. CyberShield's entire architecture depended on intricate timing. Security checks, database queries, authentication protocols, everything synchronized like clockwork. My code introduced tiny delays, minuscule inefficiencies that would compound exponentially under stress. A 2-second authentication delay becomes 4 seconds under load, which creates a bottleneck, which triggers more security checks, which creates more delays. An elegant spiral of systemic failure that would look completely natural to any outside investigator. I also created windows, brief moments when the system would be vulnerable to external probes. Not permanent backdoors, but temporary gaps that would appear predictably for anyone monitoring our network traffic. Like leaving curtains open at precisely the right moments for photographers waiting across the street. The international hacker community monitored for exactly these opportunities. A cybersecurity company showing sudden vulnerability would draw attention like blood in shark-infested waters. They'd provide the external pressure needed to trigger my carefully constructed cascade of failures. But I needed something more personal, more targeted at Oliver specifically. So I embedded a special surprise in the financial reporting systems, code that would reveal the trail of money he and Victoria had been stealing through their phantom consulting companies. Global Systems Analytics. Integrated Business Solutions. European Technology Consultants. I'd traced every fraudulent payment, every fabricated invoice, every pound they'd embezzled from the company I'd helped build. Oliver thought he was clever, hiding his theft behind legitimate-sounding corporate names. But every transaction left digital fingerprints, and I knew exactly where to look. Christmas Eve arrived grey and drizzling, typical London winter weather that matched my mood perfectly. Oliver suggested staying home instead of visiting his parents in Surrey. He wanted to reconnect with his wife before the new year brought fresh challenges. We sat in our living room beside the pathetic Christmas tree he'd insisted on buying, too small, too sparse, decorated with ornaments that held no meaning, and he actually tried to seduce me. His hands roamed my body with practiced familiarity whilst I lay beneath him, counting ceiling tiles and thinking about Victoria's perfume on his skin just hours earlier. He whispered endearments that meant nothing, promises that were already broken, declarations of love that tasted like poison. When he finished, gasping my name like a prayer to a god he'd already betrayed, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Let him have his performance of marital intimacy. In 8 days, he'd learn the true cost of his betrayal. "I love you, Erin," he whispered against my neck. "I know," I replied, because saying it back would have been the lie that broke me entirely. New Year's Eve, we attended the company party at a pretentious restaurant in Mayfair. I wore black silk and diamonds, looking every inch the successful CEO's wife. Oliver worked the room with his usual charm whilst Victoria circulated separately, maintaining their professional facade. But I caught the glances, the subtle touches, the way they unconsciously mirrored each other's movements across the crowded space. Everyone else was too drunk on champagne and success to notice, but I catalogued every stolen moment between them. At midnight, when the countdown reached 0 and everyone kissed their partners, Oliver pulled me close and whispered, "This year is going to be extraordinary." He had no idea how right he was. January 2nd was a Tuesday. Oliver always preferred handling unpleasant business early in the week. I spent Monday evening finalizing my preparations, transferring the last of the evidence to secure cloud storage, testing my encrypted communication channels one final time. The timer was set for exactly 10 minutes after 9 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Not 8:59, not 9:01. Oliver's obsession with punctuality would ensure perfect timing for his betrayal, which meant perfect timing for mine. I chose my outfit carefully, the charcoal grey suit I'd worn to our first major investor presentation, when we'd secured the funding that transformed CyberShield from startup dream to industry reality. The jacket fit perfectly, my hand steady as I applied lipstick without tremor. Every piece of armor mattered now. The call came at exactly 9 a.m. from Carol, Oliver's assistant, her voice uncomfortable with the message she'd been ordered to deliver. "Erin? Oliver needs to see you in his office immediately. He says it's urgent." "I'll be right there." I picked up my laptop bag, the old one from our startup days with coffee stains on the corners, and walked through the office for the last time as Oliver's wife and business partner. Developers looked up from their screens as I passed, some avoiding eye contact, others watching with obvious curiosity. Did they know what was about to happen? Had Oliver's gossip network already spread the word? The lift ride to the executive floor felt both endless and too brief. Each floor that passed was another second closer to the confrontation Oliver had orchestrated with such theatrical precision. When the doors opened, Carol couldn't meet my eyes, suddenly fascinated by her computer screen. "Go straight in," she mumbled. "They're waiting." They, plural. Not just Oliver, but his supporting cast for this carefully staged humiliation. I turned the handle of the door we'd installed together when we'd first moved into this office, the one with the slight squeak Oliver had always meant to fix but never quite managed. Morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a scene staged with deliberate cruelty. Oliver sat behind our mahogany desk, the one we'd bought at an estate sale in Brighton, joking that someday we'd be successful enough to deserve it. Victoria stood to his right, her hand resting on his chair with casual ownership. She wore red, a power color. Message received. Gary Hughes from HR lurked in the corner with a manila folder and the expression of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. But my mobile was recording everything from my jacket pocket, and my finger was poised over the timer that would activate in exactly 10 minutes. 10 minutes until they learned what happened when you betrayed someone who'd built the very foundation you were standing on. "Erin, please sit down." Oliver's voice carried that CEO authority he'd been practicing, detached, professional, completely devoid of the warmth that had once made me believe in us. "I'm perfectly comfortable standing, thank you." Something flickered in his eyes, annoyance that I wasn't following his carefully rehearsed script. This was meant to be his moment of absolute control, his perfectly orchestrated destruction of the woman who'd given him everything. "Very well." He straightened a stack of papers on his desk, a nervous tell I recognized from 8 years of marriage. "I'm afraid we need to discuss your position here at CyberShield." "My position as co-founder and CTO," I replied evenly. Victoria shifted slightly, Gary clutched his folder tighter, and Oliver's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Your position as an employee," he corrected, his tone sharp as broken glass. "And I'm afraid that position is being terminated effective immediately." The words hung in the air between us like a death sentence. I counted 3 heartbeats before responding, my voice steady despite the rage building inside my chest. "On what grounds?" "Performance issues, failure to collaborate with the new management structure, and creating a hostile work environment." He lifted a document, pretending to read from it though we both knew he'd memorized every lie. "There have been multiple complaints about your erratic behavior and inability to adapt to organizational changes." "Complaints from whom?" "That's confidential," Victoria interjected smoothly. Her first words since I'd entered, delivered with the satisfaction of someone who'd orchestrated this moment for months. "But I can assure you they've been thoroughly documented and verified." I looked at her directly, really looked at her. The woman I'd welcomed into our company, mentored personally, invited to dinner parties at our home. She met my gaze without flinching, her expression professionally neutral with just a hint of triumph dancing in her eyes. "How long?" I asked her directly. "I beg your pardon." "How long have you been shagging my husband?" Gary made a strangled sound that might have been shock or suppressed laughter. Oliver's face flushed crimson, but his voice remained controlled. "That's exactly the sort of baseless accusation that exemplifies your recent erratic behavior, Erin. You're paranoid, seeing conspiracies where none exist." "So Victoria's hand on your shoulder is professional courtesy? The weekend trips to the Cotswolds are strategic planning sessions?" A muscle in Oliver's jaw twitched. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No, darling. You're embarrassing yourself. But please, do continue with your little performance." His composure cracked slightly. This wasn't going according to plan. I was supposed to be emotional, hysterical, giving them more ammunition for their narrative of instability. Instead, I stood perfectly calm, my mobile recording every word from my jacket pocket. "The decision has been made," Oliver said, sliding a packet across the desk with theatrical finality. Your termination is effective immediately. You'll receive 4 weeks severance pay and continuation of health benefits for 60 days. He paused, that cruel smile finally breaking through his professional mask. And you can keep your old laptop. The one from our early days. Call it sentimental value. My laptop. My 2019 MacBook Pro that contained every original line of code, every algorithm, every innovation that had built this company from nothing. He thought he was being magnanimous, throwing scraps to the woman he'd destroyed. He had no idea he was handing me a loaded weapon. How generous, I said flatly. We think so, Victoria chimed in, unable to resist twisting the knife. Considering the circumstances. The circumstances being that you're both thieves. Nobody's stealing anything, Oliver snapped, his voice taking on a warning edge. You're a minority shareholder being removed from operational duties due to documented performance issues. Your equity remains intact, though of course its value depends on the company's continued success under new leadership. New leadership meaning Victoria. The board would rubber stamp whatever recommendation he made. He'd spent months poisoning them against me. My mobile showed 9:08. 2 minutes until the timer activated. Is that everything? I asked. Oliver seemed surprised by my composure. He'd prepared for tears, anger, desperate pleading. Not this cold acceptance of his betrayal. Not quite. His smile widened, revealing the predator beneath the polished exterior. There's one more matter of a personal nature. He pulled out another envelope, this one bearing the letterhead of Withers, the most expensive divorce lawyers in London. I filed for divorce. The papers will be served at the house tomorrow morning. I thought it would be more efficient to handle both separations simultaneously, professional and personal. The room tilted slightly, but I held steady. Even expecting it, hearing the words felt like being hollowed out with rusty spoons. How thoughtfully organized of you. I'll be moving out tonight, he continued as if discussing dinner reservations. You can keep the house temporarily. We'll sort out asset division through our respective solicitors. Our respective solicitors, already separate, already divided before I'd even signed the papers. My mobile showed 9:09. 1 minute. Anything else? Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings, Gary finally spoke, his voice apologetic despite his compliance. Standard procedure. I picked up the termination packet without reading it, then reached for the laptop bag Oliver had positioned on the side table like a prop in his theatrical production. Erin, Oliver said as I turned to leave. I stopped but didn't turn around. For what it's worth, you're brilliant. You always have been. But brilliance without business acumen, without the ability to navigate corporate politics, it only gets you so far. I did turn then, meeting his eyes one final time. You're absolutely right, Oliver. I never learned to play political games. I was too busy building the company you're about to lose. His smirk faltered slightly. Victoria's hand moved protectively to his shoulder. Security is waiting outside, Gary said quietly. My mobile showed 9:10. The timer activated silently, and somewhere in the depths of CyberShield servers, my code stirred to life like a sleeping dragon opening its eyes. 2 security guards stood in the corridor, trying to look professional rather than uncomfortable. I recognized them both, Terry and Sean, decent men who'd chatted with me every morning for 3 years. Morning, lads, I said pleasantly. Shall we get this over with? The walk through the office was surreal. Every face that turned toward me carried a verdict. Some looked away quickly, complicit in their knowledge. Others seemed genuinely confused, watching their CTO being marched out like a common criminal. My original development team looked stricken. Sarah from Security Architecture half rose from her desk as I passed, her eyes wide with shock and something that might have been guilt. At my former office, I was given 10 minutes to pack personal items. I made a deliberate show of placing sentimental objects in a cardboard box, the coffee mug from our first major client win, a photo of the original team, stress toys shaped like bugs that the developers had given me as a joke. I left everything important behind. The awards, the certificates, the framed first check we'd ever received. Let them gather dust as monuments to what Oliver had destroyed through greed and stupidity. The lift ride down felt like descending from a life I'd never reclaim. Through the lobby, past the reception desk where Emma watched with wide eyes, through the glass doors that had once represented transparency and partnership. The January air hit my face sharp and clean. Behind me, the building rose into London's grey sky, containing everything I'd built and lost in the span of a morning. But my mobile showed multiple notifications now. System alerts, automated messages, status updates flooding the hidden partition I'd created months ago. The cascade had begun. I didn't drive away immediately. Instead, I sat in my Range Rover in the car park across the street, hazard lights blinking, engine running, watching through the Rain Street windscreen as my digital masterpiece began its devastating performance. 9:14 a.m. My mobile displayed the first wave of status updates. Authentication timeout adjusted, 30 seconds. Firewall rules modified, port 443. Database response optimization disabled. Log rotation accelerated, 2-minute intervals. Backup verification suspended. Each message represented a tiny adjustment that would compound exponentially. Like removing small stones from a dam wall, individually meaningless, collectively catastrophic. Through the building's ground floor windows, I could see the first signs of distress. The reception area, usually calm with its minimalist furniture and gentle water feature, was becoming animated. Emma was typing frantically, probably fielding calls from clients whose systems were showing anomalies. 9:16 a.m. More updates flooded my screen. External probe detected, source Moscow. Database cascade initiated. Memory leak expanding, authentication service. SSL certificate validation failing intermittently. The vulnerabilities I'd created were like blood in the water, and the international hacking community was already circling. Russian cybercriminals, Chinese state actors, freelance hackers from Tel Aviv to Sao Paulo, they all monitored for exactly these opportunities. A cybersecurity company suddenly showing weakness was like a bank leaving its vault door ajar. Through the rain, I could see more clearly now. Security guards who'd been reading newspapers were on their phones, gesturing urgently. The lifts were in constant motion as teams scrambled between floors, trying to coordinate a response to threats they couldn't understand. 9:18 a.m. A group of developers burst through the building's main entrance, mobiles pressed to their ears. One was Gary from HR, his manila folder forgotten, looking like someone had told him the building was on fire. In a way, it was. No, I heard him saying into his phone as he paced frantically. The entire client portal is down. They can't access anything. The client portal, CyberShield's crown jewel, where FTSE 100 companies monitored their security in real time. If that was down, phone lines would be lighting up like Christmas trees across the city. 9:20 a.m. My mobile showed escalating alerts. Beijing probe successful, admin credentials harvested. London infiltration in progress. Toronto breach detected. Mumbai access confirmed. Some Russian hacker was probably doing a victory dance right now, having penetrated the impenetrable cybershield within minutes of detecting vulnerability. The credentials they'd stolen were real but limited, enough to cause panic, not enough for serious damage. I wasn't cruel, just precise. A taxi pulled alongside my car, the driver rolling down his window. "You all right, love? You're getting soaked." I'd been so focused on the unfolding chaos that I hadn't noticed I was standing in the rain beside my car, watching my ex-husband's empire crumble through the building's windows. "I'm perfect," I told him, and meant every word. He drove off shaking his head, probably thinking I was mad. Perhaps I was, standing in London drizzle, watching systematic destruction unfold with nothing but calm satisfaction. 9:22 a.m. The chaos inside was visible now even from across the street. I could see Oliver himself having descended from his executive throne, standing near reception gesturing wildly. His perfect CEO composure was cracking like cheap veneer. Victoria stood beside him, her red power dress looking less powerful now, more like a target. Someone actually ran, across the lobby with laptops under their arms. The first news van arrived faster than I'd expected. Someone inside must have tipped off the media. A cybersecurity firm under active attack was the kind of tech story that drove clicks and advertising revenue. My mobile buzzed with incoming calls. The first was from Charles Morrison, our lead investor, his name flashing urgently on the screen. I let it ring through to voicemail, then watched as it immediately started ringing again. I answered on the fourth ring. "Erin, thank Christ. What the hell is happening over there?" Our monitoring systems show CyberShield's entire infrastructure is compromised. I wouldn't know, Charles. I was terminated this morning. Silence. Then, what? That's impossible. The Pacific Financial save was just last week. You're the architect of the entire platform. Ask Oliver. He felt my services were no longer required. Another pause as the implications sank in. But the attacks, they started minutes after your termination became effective. Unfortunate timing, I agreed. Erin, please. Whatever's happening, companies are pulling contracts. Our portfolio is hemorrhaging value. Can you fix this? I don't work there anymore, Charles. I'm sitting in my car, locked out of all systems, with no access to the platform I built. I'll pay you directly. Consultant fees, whatever you want. Even if I wanted to help, which I don't, I couldn't access the systems remotely. Company policy, you understand. Very strict about security. He cursed creatively. This is going to destroy everything. Do you understand? Everything. I ended the call and immediately received another. Paul Harrison from Pacific Financial, the man whose company I'd personally saved from a coordinated cyber attack just 7 days earlier. Erin, we're pulling our contract. I'm sorry, but we can't be associated with a compromised security firm. The board is in emergency session. This is a complete disaster. I understand, Paul. How could this happen? You were just... He paused, and I could practically hear the gears turning. You predicted this, didn't you? When you called at 3 a.m. about our vulnerabilities, you were seeing the same weaknesses in your own system. I should go, Paul. If you start your own firm, call me immediately. We'll be your first client. The calls kept flooding in. Investors, clients, former colleagues, journalists who'd somehow obtained my number. I sent them all to voicemail, watching the notifications pile up like digital snow. At 10:47 a.m., Oliver's name appeared on my screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Erin, I need you back in the office immediately. No greeting, no pretense. His CEO voice had been replaced by something raw and desperate. I was escorted out by security, remember? Stop playing games. The composure cracked completely. The entire system is failing. We're losing everything. Your code, it's the only thing that can fix this. My code isn't the problem, Oliver. Then what is? These vulnerabilities appeared from nowhere. The timing is unfortunate, I agreed. But if you'd kept the person who understood the system instead of sacking her for your mistress, perhaps you wouldn't be in this predicament. Erin, please. His voice broke on the word. I know this morning went badly, but this is bigger than personal grievances. The company, our company, is dying. Your company. You made that abundantly clear. Silence. Then Victoria's voice came on the line, sharp with desperation. Erin, this is beneath you. Whatever vendetta you have against us, innocent people are being hurt. Our employees. The employees who watched me get marched out like a criminal. That was standard procedure. That was theater. I cut her off. You wanted everyone to see me humiliated. Now they can watch you fail. Poetic, really. Oliver grabbed the phone back. The Russians are inside our systems, Erin. Actual state actors are downloading client data. Do you understand what this means? It means you should have invested more in security infrastructure instead of phantom consulting companies. What consulting companies? What are you talking about? I smiled, sitting alone in my car. Global Systems Analytics. Integrated Business Solutions. European Technology Consultants. Shall I continue? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. I'm begging you, he finally whispered. Those 3 words hung in the air like a death knell. Oliver had never begged for anything in his entire privileged life. I can't help you, Oliver. I don't have access anymore. You made certain of that. I'll give you full admin access right now. Remote login, whatever you need. And contaminate the crime scene? I'm sure the authorities would find that interesting. The authorities. His voice pitched higher. We haven't called. You haven't notified the National Cybersecurity Center? A major attack on a company protecting FTSE 100 clients. And you haven't called GCHQ? That's going to look fascinating in the investigation. The sound he made wasn't quite a sob, but close. My mobile beeped with another incoming call. Sky News. I have to go, Oliver. Best of luck with everything. Erin, wait. I ended the call and drove home through streets that seemed different somehow. Cleaner, brighter, full of possibility. 3 days after CyberShield's spectacular implosion made headlines across every tech publication in Europe, my mobile rang with a number I didn't recognize. Miss Campbell? This is Robert Sinclair from Fortress Security Solutions. I'll be direct. We need someone who actually understands predictive threat detection, and your work at Pacific Financial speaks for itself. Are you available for consulting? I was sitting in my conservatory in Islington, still in my dressing gown at noon, watching the news coverage of Oliver's downfall with a cup of proper tea and a sense of deep satisfaction. I'm listening. £3,000 per day, minimum 2-week contract, possibility of extension. We need our entire infrastructure audited immediately. Can you start tomorrow? I nearly choked on my Earl Grey. That was more than I'd earned in a month at CyberShield. When do you need me? And just like that, my consulting career began. Not with careful planning, but with desperate companies suddenly realizing their cybersecurity might have vulnerabilities only I could detect and fix. Word spread through London's financial district faster than gossip at a cocktail party. The woman who'd saved Pacific Financial was available, and everyone wanted to ensure they weren't the next CyberShield. My second client called whilst I was still working on Fortress Security's audit. Then a third. Within a fortnight, I had more work than I could handle and was turning down contracts worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. Oliver had tried to erase my professional existence, but instead he'd made me legendary. The mysterious CTO who'd left just before the catastrophe, the only one who could have prevented it. I converted Oliver's former study into a proper office, removing his pretentious leather-bound books he'd never read, his awards for business excellence that now seemed like jokes. I replaced them with multiple monitors, a proper server setup, and a coffee machine that could sustain me through 18-hour days. The industry publications became my guilty pleasure. Every morning with my first cup of coffee, I'd read the latest updates on CyberShield's collapse. CyberShield loses 4 more major clients. Inside the chaos, former employees described toxic leadership. From £16 million to bankruptcy, a cautionary tale. The Financial Times ran a particularly devastating piece featuring anonymous interviews with former employees. Someone, I suspected Sarah from our security team, had detailed how Oliver systematically undermined his co-founder before the attack. The comment section was brutal, classic case of ego over expertise, one reader wrote. You don't fire your technical architect and expect to survive in cybersecurity. The Times business section featured a timeline of CyberShield's downfall, complete with graphs showing the stock price plummeting from £47 to £2.50 in 3 days. They'd managed to photograph Oliver leaving the office building, and he looked like he'd aged a decade, grey stubble, wrinkled shirt, the hollow eyes of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. 6 weeks after the attack, Victoria's departure made the tech gossip columns. Not a grand announcement, just a small item buried in the business pages. Head of Operations Victoria Ashworth exits CyberShield amid ongoing crisis. Sarah texted me that evening. You should have seen it. Oliver called her incompetent in front of the entire remaining staff. Said her operational excellence had failed to prevent the breach. She threw her company laptop at him. Security had to separate them. I felt a twist of something, not sympathy exactly, but recognition. Victoria had thought she was special, different from me. Now she was learning what it felt like to be discarded when things got difficult. Her LinkedIn profile disappeared entirely 2 days later. Someone had tried to hire her at a fintech startup, but a simple Google search brought up dozens of articles linking her to CyberShield's failure. She was radioactive in the industry. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday morning, delivered by a nervous process server who seemed relieved when I simply signed for them without drama. Helena Morrison, my solicitor, reviewed them that afternoon with barely concealed amazement. He's not fighting for anything, she said, puzzled. The house is yours. Joint accounts split 50-50, and he's waiving any claim to your future earnings. What about my CyberShield shares? She laughed, but it wasn't happy. What shares? The company's worthless. Your 48% of nothing is still nothing. The financial statements she showed me were staggering. Cybershield, once valued at £16 million, was now worth less than £800,000 and falling. The Canary Wharf lease alone was worth more than the company's remaining assets. He's trying to sell, Helena added. Word is he's shopping it around for pennies on the pound, but no one's interested. Who wants a cybersecurity company famous for being catastrophically hacked? Oliver tried calling me once during the divorce proceedings. I answered because Helena advised documenting any contact. Erin. His voice was flat, exhausted. I'm not calling about the company. Then why are you calling? I wanted to apologize. Properly apologize. I said nothing, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. I know what I did was unforgivable. The way I treated you, the way I ended our marriage, our partnership. I got caught up in the success, the image of being this powerful CEO. Victoria made me feel like I could be someone more important than I actually was. His voice cracked slightly. The board forced me to step down yesterday. I'm nobody now, a figurehead with a meaningless title and worthless shares in a dying company. Are you looking for sympathy? No, I'm looking for, I don't know, closure, understanding. I want you to know that I realize now what I threw away, what I destroyed through my own arrogance and stupidity. Yes, I said simply. You did. The line went quiet except for his labored breathing. The vulnerabilities, he said finally. They were too precise, too targeted. The timing was too perfect. Are you accusing me of something? No. I'm saying I understand. And if I were in your position, I probably would have done the same thing. Maybe worse. I have to go, Oliver. Yeah. Take care of yourself, Erin. That was our final conversation. The divorce was finalized a month later, and I kept Campbell, my maiden name that I'd never legally changed despite his assumptions. Meanwhile, Cybershield continued its death spiral. The London office, once bustling with 80 employees, was down to 12. They'd closed the Manchester satellite office and were trying to sublease half their Canary Wharf space. The final nail came when the National Crime Agency investigation concluded. While they found no evidence of internal sabotage, my code was far too elegant for that. They did uncover evidence of the financial irregularities Oliver and Victoria had been hiding. Those phantom consulting companies suddenly became very interesting to fraud investigators. Charles Morrison called me one last time as Cybershield entered administration. We're writing it off as a complete loss, he said. £16 million gone. My partners want to know how I could have been so blind. You saw what Oliver wanted you to see, Charles. No, I saw what I wanted to see. A charismatic male CEO with a beautiful girlfriend and a convenient technical partner who did the actual work. It's the oldest story in tech, and I fell for it completely. What happens now? Bankruptcy. The assets will be sold off. The platform you built will probably be purchased by someone who understands its actual value. 4 pennies on the pound. Exactly. And Oliver, he's unemployable in tech now. Between the failure and the fraud investigation, he's finished. Last I heard, he was moving back to his parents' place in Surrey. Where he'd started, where he'd sworn he'd never return. The ambitious boy who was going to conquer London's tech scene was going home defeated. My consulting business, meanwhile, was thriving beyond my wildest dreams. I'd incorporated as Phoenix Security Solutions, a name that felt both protective and perfectly appropriate. In 3 months, I'd earned more than my annual salary at Cybershield. Companies didn't just want my technical expertise. They wanted the woman who'd survived the industry's most spectacular betrayal and emerged stronger. 8 months after Cybershield's collapse, I was reviewing a contract that would take me to Edinburgh for a week when I received a text from an unknown number. The office is empty now. They're changing the locks tomorrow. I knew immediately it was from Sarah. She'd found work at a fintech startup in Shoreditch, taking most of the original development team with her. Her message wasn't just information, it was closure. The company we'd built, the dream we'd shared, was officially dead. I poured myself a glass of Chablis and stood on my roof terrace, looking out at London's glittering skyline. Somewhere in that maze of lights was an empty office containing the ghost of my code. Somewhere was Oliver, probably packing the last remnants of his failed empire. Somewhere was Victoria, still trying to rebuild a career that had turned to ash in her hands. And here I was, alone but not lonely, scarred but not broken, building a future entirely on my own terms. The consulting contracts on my desk represented something I'd never had at CyberShield: complete control. No co-founders to betray me, no partners to steal credit for my work, no one to gaslight me into questioning my own brilliant mind. The wine tasted like victory, complex, satisfying, earned through pain but worth every moment of suffering. I was raising the glass in a private toast when I heard the knock. Not the doorbell, a hesitant knock, like someone afraid of being turned away. It was past 10 on a Thursday evening, nearly a year since CyberShield's spectacular destruction. I looked through the peephole and felt my breath catch. Oliver stood on my doorstep, but this wasn't the polished CEO who'd destroyed my life with a smile. His hair was unkempt, too long and graying at the temples. He wore jeans and a jumper I recognized from our university days, the navy one with a small hole near the left elbow. His hands shook as he raised them to knock again. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "Hello, Oliver." He looked up, and I saw complete defeat written in every line of his face. Dark circles made his eyes look sunken, and he'd lost at least 2 stone. His wedding ring was gone, leaving a pale band of skin that looked somehow obscene. "Can we talk?" His voice cracked like a teenager's. "We have solicitors for that." "Not about the divorce. About CyberShield. What's left of it?" I leaned against the doorframe, studying him with clinical detachment. Why would I care about CyberShield? Because I'm here to beg. The words tumbled out like stones from a broken wall. The company is dying, Erin. I've got perhaps a week of operating capital left. The administrators are circling like vultures, and I can't let it end like this. That's not my problem. I know. Christ, I know. But I need you to hear me out. Just 5 minutes. Please. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the satisfaction of seeing him completely broken. I stepped aside and let him enter. He stood awkwardly in my living room, looking at the space that had once been ours. I'd redecorated completely, warm terracottas instead of his preferred clinical greys, comfortable furniture that actually invited relaxation instead of his sterile modern pieces. "Sit," I commanded, gesturing to the sofa. He perched on the edge like he might need to flee. I remained standing, maintaining the power dynamic. "The fraud investigation cleared me of criminal charges," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "But the civil lawsuits from investors are destroying what's left. Victoria's schemes, the embezzlement. I'm facing personal bankruptcy." "Victoria's schemes?" I raised an eyebrow. "You signed those checks, Oliver." His jaw tightened. "She convinced me it was standard practice, hiding emergency funds for operational flexibility. I was stupid enough to believe her lies. You were stealing from your own company. I was being manipulated by someone who..." He stopped, running trembling hands through his hair. "It doesn't matter now. She's gone. Disappeared completely. Last I heard, she was working at a call center in Glasgow." A call center. The head of operations who'd helped orchestrate my destruction was now probably handling customer complaints for minimum wage. "What do you want from me, Oliver?" He pulled a folder from his bag with shaking hands. "I want to offer you complete ownership of CyberShield. 100%. Full shareholder rights, board control, absolute technical and business authority." I laughed, short, sharp, incredulous. 100% of nothing is still nothing. "It won't be nothing if you come back." His eyes were desperate now, pleading. "We both know the platform works. You built something extraordinary. The vulnerabilities that destroyed us, they were surgical, precise, targeted." Our eyes met. He knew. Of course he knew. "If you're accusing me of something..." "I'm not." He held up his hands. "I'm saying that someone who could create those vulnerabilities could also repair them permanently. Make the platform stronger than it ever was. Why would I want a company that's toxic in the marketplace? Because underneath all the damage, all the destruction, your code is still there. Still brilliant. Still revolutionary." He leaned forward, animated for the first time. "I've had 3 different companies examine the core architecture. They all said the same thing: it's years ahead of anything else in the market. I walked to the window, making him wait while I processed his proposal. The satisfaction of this moment, him begging, offering me everything I'd always deserved, should have felt better than it did. Victoria is permanently barred from any involvement. I'll put it in writing. She's banned from the building, the industry, everything. Complete severance. And my technical decisions would be absolute. You'd have complete autonomy. I wouldn't even have access to core systems if you didn't want me to. I turned to face him. The employees who remain, do they know you're here? The 8 people left? They're the ones who told me to come. He swallowed hard. Sarah specifically said I'd thrown away the best thing that ever happened to the company through ego and stupidity. Sarah, still fighting for me even when I wasn't there to see it. I want complete access to all financial records. Real ones, not sanitized versions. Done. And Oliver. I met his eyes directly. If you ever try to undermine me again, I walk away and take the platform with me. Legally and permanently. His face went pale. How could you? The same way I could create vulnerabilities that looked like random system failures. Don't underestimate me again. He nodded slowly, understanding finally dawning. I should never have underestimated you in the first place. We spent 2 hours reviewing his proposal. He'd clearly had expensive legal help prepare it. Everything I demanded was already included, plus provisions I hadn't thought to ask for. Full medical benefits retroactive to my termination. Compensation for the months I'd been excluded. A clause stating that any future sale required my explicit approval. Complete control over hiring, firing, and strategic direction. When do you need an answer? I asked as we finished. Honestly, yesterday. But I know I have no right to pressure you. Take whatever time you need. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. Erin, I know this doesn't fix what I did. The betrayal, the affair, the way I tried to erase you from something you created. I don't expect forgiveness. Good. Because you won't get it. I know. But maybe we can build something new. Not as husband and wife, obviously that's impossible. But as business partners who learned an expensive lesson about trust and respect. After he left, I called Helena, my solicitor. He offered you what? She sounded stunned. Erin, this is unprecedented. You'd have complete control of a company that, despite its current troubles, owns genuinely valuable intellectual property. Is it legally sound? I'll review everything properly tomorrow, but from what you've described, yes. The question is whether you want to return to that environment after everything they put you through. Did I? My consulting business was thriving beyond my wildest dreams. I was my own boss, choosing clients, setting terms, building something entirely mine. But then I thought about the platform, my code, my innovations, sitting dormant while inferior competitors prospered. The problems it could solve, the security it could provide, all wasted because of Oliver's betrayal and stupidity. I texted Sarah, Oliver came to see me tonight. Her response was immediate. Please come back. We need you. The platform needs you. I'll personally ensure no one ever disrespects you again. Monday morning, I walked through CyberShield's doors for the first time in nearly a year. The office was ghostly, empty desks, dark offices, the reception area completely unmanned. The 8 remaining employees were clustered in what used to be the break room, converted now into a makeshift operation center. They all stood when I entered, like subjects greeting their returning queen. Sarah stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Welcome home. Where's Oliver? Small conference room. He said he'd stay completely out of your way unless you specifically requested his presence. Smart. He was giving me space to establish absolute authority from the very first moment. I spent the morning reviewing the damage, and it was worse than I'd imagined. The platform was held together with digital duct tape and desperate prayers. But underneath the hasty patches and emergency workarounds, my original architecture remained fundamentally sound. Give me 72 hours, I told the team. We'll not only be operational, we'll be stronger than ever before. The work was exhausting but familiar, like returning to a language I'd spoken fluently before being forced into silence. Every line of code welcomed me back like an old friend eager to dance again. The vulnerabilities I'd created were still there, dormant but dangerous. I closed them one by one, then built new defenses that turned former weaknesses into impenetrable strengths. By Wednesday afternoon, the platform was humming with renewed life. Not just functional, elegant. The months of distance had given me perspective on improvements I'd been too close to see before. Oliver appeared in the server room doorway where I was working, his presence hesitant, uncertain. "The monitoring systems," he said quietly. "They're all green for the first time since you sacked me." "Yes, they'll stay that way." "Thank you." I looked at him properly for the first time since returning. "I'm not doing this for you, Oliver. I'm doing it for what this platform represents. For the problems it can solve, the data it can protect, the good it can do in the world." "I understand." "Do you? Because this time, there are no second chances. Cross me again, and you'll discover what real destruction looks like." He nodded and left me to my work. I turned back to my screens, watching lines of code flow like digital poetry. The platform pulsed with renewed strength, and for the first time in a year, I felt complete. Within a week of my return, Pacific Financial called. Not Oliver, me directly. "Erin, Paul Harrison here. We heard you're back at CyberShield. Is it true the vulnerabilities are completely resolved?" "Every single one, plus additional safeguards that didn't exist before. We want to return as clients. But only if you personally guarantee the security architecture." I glanced across the office at Oliver, who was pretending not to eavesdrop from his desk. "Send the contract to my attention. I'll review it personally." 3 months later, we'd recovered 6 major clients and attracted 4 new ones. Each contract came with personal security reviews by me, my signature on every assessment. My name had become the company's seal of quality. The tech blog started calling it the Campbell Resurrection, the extraordinary comeback led by the woman who'd been betrayed and had returned more powerful than ever. The final board meeting I attended was different from any that had come before. I sat at the head of the table, not beside it, not opposite Oliver, but at the position of absolute authority. "Before we begin," I announced to the assembled investors, "I need to clarify the new structure. All decisions, technical, strategic, operational, and financial, require my approval. Mr. Edwards handles day-to-day administrative tasks under my direction. Any questions?" Silence. They all understood what had happened here. The woman they dismissed as a hysterical wife had returned as an unquestioned leader. "Excellent. Let's discuss expansion." 9 months after my return, Phoenix Security Solutions, which I'd kept running in parallel, was acquired by CyberShield for £12 million. I was essentially buying my own consulting business, consolidating everything under one roof that I controlled completely. The platform was now worth £20 million to £4 million more than the company's previous peak. Oliver's remaining 0% stake was worth exactly what he deserved, nothing. At the company celebration that evening, I stood alone at the front of our restored offices. Not beside Oliver, not sharing credit, but as the sole architect of everything we'd rebuilt. "CyberShield nearly died because we forgot what made us strong," I said, looking directly at Oliver, who sat in the back like any other employee. "We forgot that technology isn't about politics or personalities or power games. It's about building something that works, something that protects, something that matters." The applause was thunderous and genuine. Sarah started it, but everyone joined, even Oliver, clapping slowly from his corner table. Later, as I gathered my things, he approached me one final time. "For what it's worth," he said, "you're the most brilliant person I've ever known. I just wish I'd remembered that before I lost everything that truly mattered." "You didn't lose everything, Oliver. You still have a job, a salary, a chance to rebuild your reputation through honest work." "That's not what I meant." I knew what he meant. But that door had closed permanently the moment he'd chosen Victoria over me, ego over partnership, betrayal over love. "Good night, Oliver." As I left the office, my office now, completely and irrevocably mine, I thought about the 10-minute timer that had started this entire journey. 10 minutes that had changed everything, destroyed an empire, and ultimately created something far better from its ashes. Walking to my Tesla through London's evening drizzle, I felt the weight of my keys, heavier now with additional offices, server rooms, the physical proof of absolute authority earned through brilliance, patience, and perfect timing. My phone buzzed with a message from a journalist wanting to interview me about the greatest comeback story in British tech history. I deleted it without reading. The real story was too complex for headlines, too personal for public consumption. It was about discovering that sometimes the person others underestimate most holds all the actual power. It was about learning that betrayal, whilst painful, can become the foundation for something infinitely stronger. The platform hummed securely across 3 continents now, protecting data for some of the world's largest corporations. My code, my creation, finally acknowledged and celebrated as mine alone. And Oliver had learned the most expensive lesson of his privileged life: never underestimate the woman who built your kingdom, because she's the only one who truly knows how to bring it down. More importantly, she's the only one brilliant enough to build it back up, bigger, stronger, and completely under her own control. The wine I'd drink tonight would taste like victory, justice, and the sweet satisfaction of a plan executed with mathematical precision. Sometimes revenge truly was a dish best served cold, calculated, and absolutely devastating. I'd built an empire, watched it burn, and risen from its ashes like the phoenix I'd always been meant to become. And this time, no one would ever take it away from me again.